Today we are live with Suyash Sumaroo, who happens to be the co-founder of Horizon Africa and founder of Codevigor, two of the companies that he founded. And we are discussing a very interesting topic called blockchain. Hi, Suyash, how are you?
Good, Sandeep, and thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to talk blockchain with you, always.
Definitely. So we are excited that Suyash is launching his masterclass on blockchain on the edVentr platform. So it'll be available to all the people who want to learn about the fundamentals of blockchain. So Suyash, my first question to you would be, how would you explain blockchain to a 10-year-old?
That's a very simple question, but the answer is really difficult because when we talk about blockchain, there are so many things. We're talking about Bitcoin, we're talking about cryptocurrencies, we're talking about smart contracts, and I'm sure that all these things already raise the level of complexity. But for me, uh, at its essence, for me, blockchain is just a technology. We have so many technologies. We have the internet, we have like AI, artificial intelligence, we have like even chat technologies which power apps like WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. So these are different kinds of technologies which answer to a very specific kind of problem. And blockchain is just that. There are certain kinds of problem in our current way of doing things that is being answered by the blockchain technology. Now, the answers are in very different forms. Like we have problems, let's say, in terms of currencies, when we're talking about fiat currency and different kinds of currencies. And the answer in terms of blockchain is cryptocurrencies. And on the other hand, you have problems like governance, and the answer in blockchain is, for example, decentralized governance or smart contracts. So for me, at its essence, blockchain is just a new technology out there to give different ways of solving problems.
So I mean, how what I understand of blockchain is that it is making transaction or interactions more secure and much faster, right? I mean, I was in the banking industry, and we had a very direct use case, which is transactional instant transactions. Today most of the international transactions happen through Swift, and the domestic transactions would happen through the system either provided by the central bank or a closed user group operated by multiple banks. Now, blockchain, if applied into all of this, can make the transactions instantaneous, right, and a lot more secure. When we explain to a layman what is blockchain, I mean, I've had this conversation with multiple people. You go to the next level and say it's a distributed ledger. The person says, what is a distributed ledger? Right? It is, we said the information is distributed. It may be in your computer or it's in multiple nodes. So what would the layman say? How does it matter into my life? That's what most of the bankers also don't understand. Most of the people who can really benefit from blockchain do not understand that what could be the potential use case or the benefit of blockchain. If you would like to share some examples in terms of how blockchain can simplify and fasten multiple aspects of our lives.
Definitely. I think that as you mentioned, there are different sectors and different people from different background, like professional background. And for each of these different sectors, the advantages of blockchain is different. The use cases for blockchain are different. I will take an example. It's an example that I like to take because it kind of tells the story of how I started learning about blockchain, and it will also show you how where blockchain has its use cases. So in 2016, if I'm not wrong, yeah, so 2016, I was launching a software that I created, a document management system. And at that time, I was aiming in terms of like my target audience were banks or all those financial institutions, management companies, insurance companies. And and when I went to sell them this software, they liked the software, but there was a question that always came towards me. And that question was, hey, okay, we like your software, but how can we trust you with our data? Because we are talking about confidential information. I know that okay, you might be here for a few years, but we can't trust you with our data. And my answer was, hey, look, I've been here for the last 2 months. You can trust me with your data. And of course, that was not a satisfactory answer. I always lost the deal. They didn't go forward. And that started something that I was trying to find a solution where my clients did not need to trust me, but just needed to trust something that they had control over. And this is what blockchain is all about, the trust layer. How can you create a technology where people or systems or institutions don't need to trust other people, but they just need to trust a system which is, by the way, open source, verifiable. And this is where I came up with the first, I would say, blockchain solution in Mauritius, where you could ensure the integrity of information. And at that point, I had an answer, and I said, "Hey, you don't need to trust me or my platform. You just need to trust the blockchain technology." And this answered a very specific use case in terms of document or information integrity. So you have a lot of these different specific use cases where blockchain can be applied. A lot of time we think that okay, we have this specific sector, we have the banking sector, and there are certain ways things are done. It's not just a matter of okay, we take blockchain and we replace the same processes. It doesn't work like that. Sorry. So it doesn't work like that. It's more about how blockchain can actually eliminate some processes. In terms, instead of doing like 10 steps using the blockchain technology, you can actually use only 2 steps. So it's here to disrupt, not to change, but to disrupt certain sectors. So I think you're on mute, Sandeep. Yeah.
All right. So, I enrolled in some certain educational courses, and this was, I think, 2 or 3 years back. I think it was a program by the Oxford University. And, they issued me my certificate over blockchain, right? And I had to access it over blockchain. And I was trying to understand that, what is the difference? And, and of course, it made it a lot more secure. I had to put in the key to access the certificate, and it had the limited access.
Mm,
And as you mentioned about smart contracts, I believe this is an example
correct.
of a smart contract. One question that I think everybody has in mind, and especially we've discussed this in the past as well, that it's the first use case of blockchain, and why blockchain became popular was because of Bitcoin, right? The global relevance of
Correct.
blockchain came into existence. And till date, we've not been able to dissociate blockchain from Bitcoin in the minds of people, right? I mean, an example that we've seen is that when, let's say, you're doing blockchain and you go to a bank and say, this is what I'm doing a business that is enabling organizations to perform better using blockchain, and the bank will be on red alert that oh my god, blockchain, no, 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 I'm not sure whether the compliance is going to give you a green flag or not. So this has been a misconception or misunderstanding, or lack of understanding of what the technology is, right? So how far are we today with regards to this dissociation of Bitcoin and blockchain? And if not, what needs to be done for people to really understand that blockchain is very independent, it's a pure technology that is helping enhance efficiencies and probably reduce turnaround time for most of the work that's happening. So what needs to be done in that regard?
I believe that you said something very interesting. You took like the example of the banking sector, and that's one of the sectors where the when knowledge about blockchain and all the technologies related to blockchain um, are quite at an early stage. So this is not this was something to be expected, because blockchain, and when we talk about blockchain and cryptocurrencies, they are quite complex in terms of the implementation, and also like in terms of how we understand these technologies is can also create complexities. For me, if we're talking about blockchain in those traditional orthodox sectors, then the education bit becomes very important. Of course, when we talk about blockchain from the technical perspective, and we are, let's say, we are among coders or developers, then the level of understanding is different. But when we talk about very orthodox, when we're talking about the banking sector, the insurance sector, or the agricultural sector, then there needs to be a level of a need for educating these people, um, without sounding patronizing, but this technology is here to stay. So it's very important that we understand how this technology is going to, how this technology works, firstly. Secondly, how this technology is going to affect my sector, and thirdly, how this technology is going to affect the way people interact between themselves. So it's for me, when we talk about blockchain, it's like a second layer on top of the internet. So we know how the internet, how useful, how important the internet is right now, especially when we are in this COVID situation. Then the importance is even higher. And with blockchain, it's the same thing. A layer upon the internet, okay, which brings about a layer of trust between different entities. So it's important that we understand how it works and what it is. So of course, as we were talking a bit earlier, there are so many things to learn about blockchain. And the challenge is not only to learn about blockchain, but to know what to learn. If someone from the finance sector wants to learn about, let's say, decentralized governance and things like that, maybe it's not relevant to what they are doing. Maybe something more relevant is to know how cryptocurrencies work. What's the difference between Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum? What's a utility token? What's a cryptocurrency? These things are important, and it's very important to know what to learn, and let's say when to learn about
Definitely, definitely. And I'm seeing, for example, if you take the example of Mauritius, I've heard, the central bank and even the prime minister mentioned that we have to launch our own digital currency, right? Which, of course, as I understand correctly, it'll be on the blockchain network. So that means, and I think a lot of countries have already done that. China has attempted and done that. I believe Germany has made certain progress. Singapore has made certain progress. So if you look at governments are moving in that direction. I remember reading somewhere that UAE, maybe in specific Dubai, and they wanted to move a lot of their governance onto blockchain, right? To I believe have better controls and have better efficiency and faster turnaround times. So the adoption is definitely happening, but in the masses, I believe the education, as you rightly mentioned, needs to happen. And that brings me to the question that a lot of large organizations may be using blockchain. A lot of I see some of the leading banks forming close user groups and testing blockchain for transactional purposes, and some of the smart contracts, either at the government level or at the university level, the example that I shared, is being utilized. For a smaller organization, how can a smaller organization in any of their processes use blockchain? And is it, in today's day and age, is it cost effective for a smaller organization to use blockchain? We can take the example of maybe a retail organization that's using a lot of data, that is using a lot of transactional.
Correct. Very interesting question, in the sense that when we're talking about something, let's say relatively small, as you mentioned, a retailer or something like that, the first thing that comes to mind is payment solutions. A retailer, let's say an e-commerce website or anything like that, For me today, one of the most, let's say, persistent and important problems when we talk about e-commerce and retailing is payment solutions. So you have all these barriers to entry, all these requirements that you need to set up and to comply to before you can set up any payment solution. And I remember when you're talking about Mauritius that um, when I first started in 2014, when I first started Codevigor, I launched an e-commerce platform, and the main issue was setting up a payment solution. And it was so difficult that it could take like 3 to 6 months to set up a payment gateway for a merchant account. So that was very difficult. And even today, I would say the situation is a bit better, but not up to the extent that we would want. So this is where the blockchain technology in terms of cryptocurrencies can be very useful. For example, setting up a Bitcoin-based payment system is very easy and very quick. You actually have WordPress plugins where you can just plug in your existing websites and you can just start accepting Bitcoin. And it's very safe, it's very secure. They set up your cold wallet, your hot wallet. So it's very fluid in terms of experience for the seller. Now imagine you're selling this to someone outside Mauritius, and that's where it becomes interesting. The blockchain technology not only opens like new opportunities here in Mauritius, but actually allows you to set up a system where anyone from any country can actually make a payment and receive their product. So these these interactions, this opening of the borders is very interesting, and it makes more sense for companies to actually open their borders than instead to say, hey, look, let's form a coalition, let's form a group to use blockchain between us. That's one use of the blockchain, but the real power of blockchain technology is opening up your business model and actually tapping into the opportunities that the rest of the world is offering us.
Exactly. I mean, correct me if my understanding is correct. I see blockchain as a very democratic, one step further democratic solution as compared to the cloud-based solution. I'm not sure if my understanding is correct, but you can definitely, I mean,
Sure, sure. I mean, for me, when I talk about blockchain, there is one word which is as important as the word blockchain. It's decentralization. So when we analyze our current society, our current information systems, it's very centralized. You have, for example, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, you have Google, and all of these big mega corporations, they hold your data, they hold all the control. Tomorrow, if Facebook wants to use your data in whatever way they want, they can do it. And of course, they have their terms and conditions and things like that. But you don't know how your data is being used, and the only thing you can do is trust them, trust their terms and conditions. And you know how trust goes when we talk about these big corporations. It's always very tricky. So on one hand, we have these centralized big bodies, and now for the first time in history, we have a choice. Now we can create a decentralized system where the power is not in the hands of a single entity or group of persons, but instead in the hands of all the people who use it. That's what's happening with Bitcoin. If tomorrow a country or I don't know, anyone wants to stop Bitcoin, they can't do it because there's no central entity, unless they go in each and everyone's house and just cut the internet connection or uninstall the Bitcoin software. So it's practically impossible to stop Bitcoin. And that's the power of decentralization. You can't actually stop it. You can put laws, you can put communiques, you can put anything, but enforcing these laws is practically impossible. And this is why decentralization is so important. When we talk about decentralization, we talk about choice. Maybe it's not better, Okay, maybe it's not better, but at least right now, people or technologists have the choice of creating something different, and that's for me personally. That's the beauty of it. How you can use decentralization to create systems which are not controlled by any single entity.
But does that also take away the control or the surveillance away from the purview of the regulator? I mean, you took the example of a payment system using Bitcoin that can be integrated using WordPress, right? And these examples that you mentioned, it's basically making the process, any transactional process, more democratic, right? Where the
Yeah.
control is with the individual more than potentially the regulator. Am I correct to say that?
Absolutely, and that's the big issue that we have. And the thing is that regulators, not only in Mauritius, all around the world, they are very slow at learning the technologies and adapting to the environment. And what's happening is that people is just going forward. I mean, if someone can do a transfer from one country to another with Bitcoin, and it's costing them like 1% or 2% commission compared to what we actually have, like 3%, 5%, 10% commission. So these are like clear advantages for these people to use. And if regulations are not catching up, and what's happening right now is exactly that, they're going to lag behind a lot, and people are not going to wait for regulations. Okay, so what should happen really now is regulators should actually be innovators. They should say, okay, we have these technology, we have the blockchain, we have the Bitcoin. Let's set up a regulatory framework around this. Okay, you want to set up a Bitcoin business? Yes, sure, do so, get a license for us. So this is the framework. Go on and do your business. But right now it's actually the opposite. So they are catching up a lot, and what's going to happen is that they're going to lag behind a lot in terms of implementing any of the things that they want to implement. And by the end of the day, anything that they would want to implement are going to be quite quite basically irrelevant.
Exactly. I mean, as you mentioned, that any innovative startup can come use, let's say, the Stellar network, the Ripple network, or any closed user group, in multiple countries, and enable remittances or cross country transactions, which may be instantaneous, right? And the user is able to track it a lot better. Where your transaction is, whether it has reached or not over the blockchain. So of course, in terms of efficiency, blockchain is way ahead. And what I understand is that that's what governments would want to do with the digital currency, right? So let's say if a country wants to set up an internal transaction network, right? Most of the countries have their own internal transaction network, which is predominantly run by the central bank. And if
Mhm.
they create a digital currency and a blockchain, that means bank A can transfer to bank B, sitting onto that digital currency, and that transaction becomes instantaneous instead of a T+1 or T+2, clearing and settlement time. And so the same can happen internationally as well, where regulators can come together and say, okay, these are the 5 countries, 10 countries, or this region where we can do inter-country transactions using the digital currency or the blockchain network. Is that happening somewhere? I mean, I know Ripple network. Now I believe there must be more than 100 banks connected to the Ripple network, and I know some banks in Europe were creating closed user groups. I'm not sure if regulators were also doing that. But is that happening globally? I mean, are countries coming together, or institutions coming together to create networks for blockchain to operate?
They are actually. So you have what is called these consortium blockchains. So you have these different bunch of companies who would come together. They may be in the same sector or different sectors. They may come together and set up like their own internal blockchains, and which will help them like do transactions within themselves, but also open up to, let's say, other consortium blockchains. So we do have these different kinds of structures cropping up quite a lot lately. It's quite popular. But a lot of people in the blockchain space, especially the hardcore, blockchain developers or Bitcoin developers, they're not very favorable to these things because for them, the real power of blockchain is really to have something open, and there's no use in their perspective to have something which is closed for a certain number of companies. The real power of blockchain or decentralization is to have something open, which is not controlled by a single entity. And if you take the example of a central bank digital currency, and that's the same principle. Now, it does have certain advantages, like you mentioned. It will help in terms of transactions. It will help in terms of um, rapidity of transactions, and security of transactions. These are real advantages which are out there. But if you try to see it in the grand scheme of things, that's not very different from what actually happens when we talk about, for example, for the Mauritian rupee. It's still controlled by the central bank. So instead of having the physical Mauritian rupee fiat currency, they are just issuing a digital cryptographic token, but which does have the same capability. So it does bring things in terms of innovation, but on the other hand, having something more open, more decentralized, maybe for certain use cases, is much better.
Interesting, interesting. So it's a very interesting topic. So yes, I think it's important that people learn, understand, comprehend what blockchain really is, what its use cases are, and we are really glad that you've come forth to launch your course on blockchain, which will be available online on the edVentr platform. So if you would like to share, what will the course comprise of? What should people be looking forward to, and who are these people who should be present for this blockchain masterclass that will be conducted by you on the edVentr platform?
Sure, sure. I mean, my aim, like since the start, has always been to share this knowledge about blockchain. It's no use being, for example, theoretically the only one who knows about blockchain in Mauritius. I mean, that's not fun and it's not useful. And the real power of knowing about blockchain is that you can share it with other people so that they learn. And the bigger the community, the bigger the ecosystem, the better it is for everyone. So for the course, I will be talking a lot about the basics of blockchain. So you have a lot of different things that come like during conversations. We have like what's a cryptocurrency, what's a token, what's the difference between a cryptocurrency and a token, what are smart contracts, the different types of blockchains, what really is Bitcoin, how does it work. You've heard a lot about mining, and you have a lot of these miners which are making a lot of money. So I have a lot of questions like, can I become a miner right now? And so we'll broach all these topics. And a very important topic right now is about scams. So I've been working in this sector for the last few years, and I've seen a lot of scams, and people who maybe know some stuff about blockchain and cryptocurrency get scammed very easily. So these courses, these master classes are very useful in spotting these things. And if you know your basics, okay, even a sophisticated scam or scammer won't be able to fool you. So there are so many things that will help you in this course, plus of course to see how blockchain can be used in your specific sector. So we'll keep it very open, quite basic, but we'll also go in very specific sectors where you can try to see, okay, how does blockchain work in my use case? Should I go forward, or maybe should I just learn the basics? That's basically what we are going to do.
Interesting, interesting. So yes, so I personally am very much looking forward to this course on blockchain, and I'm sure it'll be useful for so many people to understand what the
I'm
myth
sure.
blockchain is, or whatever misconceptions people have. It'll help them clarify from what I learned from you. And
Absolutely.
yes, thank you so much once again, Suyash. It was a pleasure interacting with you. And
Thank you, Sandeep.
to all those who will be joining in the course, enjoy learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.